One of the politicians' greatest assets is to be able to pick sense out of nonsense. So first of all, have a vision and then surround yourselves with the persons who not only buy into that vision, but have the means and the information that will help lead that politician to realizing that vision. In other words, being a politician with a vision, with no real idea as to how you can bring that vision about, does not disqualify you from becoming a leader if you can find people who can come up with the ideas and implementation methods in order for that vision to come to pass. I believe that part of the problem of the PNP administration in the 1990s is that it had a vision. It wanted to do something material to the people of Jamaica, the ordinary people, being a very materialistic society, and so they had a vision. How they were going to accomplish that vision, they may not exactly knew how. And so persons in the private sector took it upon themselves to go to the government, seeing where the government trend is going, to give them advice as to what they think needs to be done in order to realize the vision. Except what they really was doing was giving the government advice that would serve their own narrow personal and business interests. But let me pause here for a moment so I can give you a warm welcome to Jamaica 411. Thank you so much for stopping by, keeping me company as usual. If you're here with me for the first time, welcome, welcome. Please subscribe. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoy the content or find it informative. Share as widely as possible, and feel free to leave your comments in the comments section. To my subscribers and my regular viewers, welcome back. Always nice to have you. Yes, of course. And of course, you know the ropes. You're going to give the video a thumbs up from now on, because you know that when we start to get down to it, you don't want me to be asking you to do so. No. So go ahead, please. Give the video a thumbs up from now on. Share as widely as you can, and then you can return and rejoin me. And of course, you know that I thank you in advance and do appreciate it. Okay, so now that you're back, let us get down to business. So what am I on to these PSOJ people for now? Why am I troubling them? Well, me troubling them, you know, my peeps, because of them first trouble we, and we not alone about if it trouble we, and things that them can get well with it. Because then we continue to trouble we. That's how it go. Yes. So, I have this entitled PSOJ's Role in the 1990s Meltdown. You did think I did only PJ alone, don't it? And the PNP. Yeah, man, we know you did think so. And then, of course, there is the negative growth that the country experienced during the 2000 era, early 2000, 4.5% negative growth from 2008 to 2012. And yes, I know my PNP friends thought that it was only Bruce Golding that had to be blamed for it. Yeah, man. Well, I have news for everybody. PNP and JLP alike. I want you all to pay attention to me now. Draw on a chair and come closer. Get on a pen and paper if necessary, or your recordings, and listen real good. Because, yes, the two political parties, PNP, JLP, the administration of PJ Patterson, the administration of Bruce Golding, to every degree is to be blamed for what happened. Patience, don't get excited yet. Hear me out. Listen to what I have to say first, yes. And they are to be blamed not only because they had the political responsibilities that them we vote for to ensure they look out for our best interests. But it was also their responsibility to, again, surround themselves with people who can give them good advice. It was also their responsibility, when they get that advice, to be able to ascertain what effects it would have on the ordinary people, on the consumers. For the PNP, they are thinking of people as poor people. For the Jamaica Labour Party, they are thinking of people as consumers. Same thing. As long as whatever it is that you do is in the best interest of the people, whether you see them as poor people or as consumers, then you can't go wrong. And that now is where the problem came in. They were listening. We can't fault a government for listening. They must listen. Must listen. It's essential. The question is, who do they listen to? Well, the tendency is to listen to people who are educated, who are successful, and who they believe may have knowledge and experience to impart to them. Unfortunately, it don't work that way in this country. Largely because people don't make decisions or give advice, especially to the government, especially when you're dealing with some of these organizations, is that they are acting on behalf of their membership. So when the government is sitting down with these various groups, they hope they can get a consensus from the one set of people that they never sit down with and they never take advice from. Even when you meet them out on the street, even when you contact them, they don't take advice from certain people. And that is a problem. Every government, I am sure, have had the benefit of sound advice from people who have visions, people who have skills in solving problems. Sound advice. But because you don't have a degree or you don't have a PhD, right? You're not a successful business person or a big name business person, they don't listen. And that's a failing of a lot of people in this society, unfortunately. But it is the government we're dealing with now, because with them, they can either make or break us as a people. Right? Now, having said all of that, it was these people, along with others, including R. Danny Williams, and this was revealed in R. Danny Williams's submission to FinSAC, that it was the private sector organization of Jamaica, himself and others who are not members, who went to the PJ Patterson government after the PNP won the election in 1989 and introduced the Fair Competition Act. It's now where Jamaica goes from here. And they came up with this bright idea to make the Fair Competition Act more workable, especially in terms of the fact that you're trying to encourage competition in the market, in the country, right? So to make it workable and feasible, they came up with a bright idea that the government needs to deregulate. Now, I'm not sure if the PNP wasn't of the same mindset, but surely they went to the party attempting to influence policy, suggested that they should deregulate the foreign exchange as well as the economy, that they will bring home their foreign exchange and that the system will work. There will be no running out of the country with the foreign exchange, which was what was happening in the 70s, right? The restriction on the foreign exchange was established by the PNP government in the 1970s, if I recalled right, and carried all the way through the 80s until the 90s, when it was deregulated and you could go out with any amount of US dollars you feel like going out with and coming in with whatever amount. Of course, there are restrictions as to the amount of cash that you can carry. But it was this organization and others that said to PJ, do not do it slowly. Clearly, the government was getting advice from its technocrats that this thing should be phased in so that it doesn't shock the economy, right? Because as you deregulate, of course, you know what is going to happen. It means that more imports can come in. They were aware, so was the government, that the NIR was very meager. But still, they tell PJ, don't worry yourself. You don't know nothing about business. We are the business people. And we are telling you that this is the right way to go. You are a lawyer. You don't know about this thing, boss. Listen to we. Take a chance with us. Take a chance. And we are telling you this thing will work. Okay, we will phase it in. No, nobody will not phasing in. You don't need to phase in nothing. Just dash it out. Drop it on them without warning. And everything will be all right. Now, I think it must be very obvious, given the outcome of that decision in September of 1991, that none of the businesses that eventually collapsed were represented at that meeting. I don't expect there were any members of Goodyear that eventually, I believe, moved out of the island, nor Gillette that eventually moved out, and the several other businesses that collapsed. Because had they been present, they would have been able to persuade PJ that if you deregulated rapidly, what will happen is that people can now go abroad and buy tires and razor blades and condensed milk and all sorts of stuff and bring it into the island to compete with us at a very low price. And we are not ready yet. We cannot compete. We need to retool. Give us, say, a year and a half and we should be ready, right? The balance of the persons who were present clearly did not include the manufacturers. And that was a problem. PJ must have been hearing all of this from the insurance company and the banks, who stood to benefit the most from increased activities, whether the activities is occurring in Jamaica in manufacturing or in importing. The banks would have to be involved, and insurance would have to be put on these goods going in and out or coming into the island. So there was no balance. That's the mistake that PJ made when he decided to entertain these people. He ought to have recognized that the persons who were sitting before him were not representatives of the various industries that would have been affected by the decision he was about to make. As a leader, if you're going to be taking advice, you need to have all the views contending, all the interests, competing interests before you, and then you can then make a decision. He did not have the manufacturers before him and the mining interests. And so he went ahead and took the advice from these people who clearly would have been all right if the system had been put in place on a rapid rate right away. You pass the law today, and maybe a month or two after it is in effect. They would have benefited from that, because from day one the banks would have been gaining and the insurance company would have been gaining. So this is telling me as a clue, and you can tell me if my reasoning is faulty, as a clue that what happened was that PJ did not have a good representation of the interest, all the interest in the economy at the time. before him to give him any counter argument, which now would let him realize that what them bankers and them insurance company telling us is not a good idea. What we should do is phase it in. And we would have been a much better off, because the poor people would still be able to buy them jeans and them Sammy shoes, right? At knockdown price. Sammy shoes $100, jeans pants for $200 during the entire period, because they could go and get the clothes and shoes and the material and so on elsewhere and bring them here and sell or manufacture, as the case may be. These same people you see here. And what you're looking at now are the past presidents of the private sector organization of Jamaica. So what them look like? You see what them look like? Good. But at the time when the PNP was in office, from 1989, when we regained power, it was Butch Stewart who was president from 1989 to 1990, and Dennis Laylow was president of the PSOJ, as you can see, from 1990 until 1992. So I would guess that it was Dennis Laylow who would have led the delegation to meet with PJ to give him what I suppose they would have thought were sound advice, right? And because they are selfish, some would argue that they represent an organization and therefore the organization's interest is what you portray. But I would think that anybody with common sense would know that since it's the consumer who drives the economy, not necessarily the supplier. The supply is important, because without the supply and the adequate supplies, you have problems, right? The consumers, though, are the king. And therefore, any policy that is going to be in your best interest, you members of the private sector organization of Jamaica, any policy that is going to be pursued by the government that is in your best interest has to first of all be in the best interest of the consumer. You wouldn't agree with me? Because if the consumers are better off, you will be better off. And when you start to flounder, right? If you check it out in history, in this country at any rate, it is when the consumers have been given a battering. But uno don't see that. With all uno education, with all uno years of experience, uno don't have one damn sense. Go and tell PJ. Met with uno know so uno wasn't widely represented at that meeting. But uno go and tell PJ to put a policy in place that would only benefit uno. And because uno so damn greedy and stupid, uno never recognize that if customers, who are the other manufacturers, miners and other business people, were not making money, uno couldn't make money either. Uno couldn't see that. Right? And so uno went there with narrow interests and got PJ to listen to him. Him took a chance him take. And what happened in the end? Ruin. In the effort to fix the problem that PJ caused by taking FUNO advice, the only tools that were available to government in mopping up the liquidity, whether in Jamaica or anywhere else, that's the system that was set up. It's an inadequate system because it allows, listen to me now, my peeps, it allows the government to pump money into the economy. And that is usually necessary whenever it is that there is a shortage of money. So a lot of production is taking place. You must have the money to back it. You must have the value in currency to back it. Otherwise, what you're going to have is a shortage of money. When there's a shortage of money, means that everybody have to drop them price to get the things them off them shelf because them have bills to pay, them have them workers to pay, them have them light and them water and them taxes and all of that to pay. So when you have too much goods in the economy and not enough money in supply, that is known as deflation. And it is just as bad, perhaps even worse than inflation, because it means that businesses now can collapse because there is just not enough money. People don't have enough money to come and buy from them. And every now and then that happens in our society. You will hear people say money now run. No money now run. That's what they mean. That our ordinary people are recognized. So no money now run. You get it? Great. So, PJ, go listen to them. And that was that. The Goodyears of this world and the Gillette of this world and quite a number of them that had licenses to operate in Jamaica, they could afford to move out. So their parent company abroad moved them out, which meant that their accounts went with them as well. So these people who thought they were representing their own narrow interests and somehow there will be a whole heap of things in it for them, lost. All of them gone to Trinidad. And then I ship back stuff to Jamaica because the economy won't know. And then foreign exchange now had to be expended. There was a demand on foreign exchange. PJ went and increased the money supply. And there was no goods and services to back it up because manufacturers were moving out. And who could not move out because they had no bucket if they collapsed. So the only tool available whenever the government pumps money into the economy is to use the treasury bills and bonds to mop it up. But that is not even a sensible thing because that mop up is like a loan them taking. Them give you the money and then them borrow it back from you to pay you over a little bit over time, hoping that the market will stabilize. There is another tool that they can use, but it is something that they will have to legislate. And it probably will be the first time in the history of any country in this world where it will be done. It's a logic. And you have to apply logic whenever you're doing anything in life, my peeps. And some years ago, I devised a philosophy, an idea, a law, principle of law concerning the solution to a problem. So it's a principle of solution, right? Here is how it goes. If you want to find a solution to a problem and you want to reverse the problem, to put yourself back in the same position you were in before, at least, that is to say that you want to find a solution to the problem that was created, then whatever steps you took that brought you into the problem in the first place, you must turn around and take the steps back. And that is the only solution to the problem. If you try to take another road, if you, for example, you're going down a road and you want to go to Mobile, you take a wrong route, you could travel along the route and try and find a way out if there is a way back. But the best thing to do when you recognize your mistake is simply to turn the vehicle around, drive back to the intersection, and go in the direction where you were supposed to go. That's the quickest and fastest way to get yourself out of a problem. If you're going to find a solution to a problem, and that's what you think is a solution, is going to cause you to have to make other adjustments, and then make other adjustments. That is not the solution. The perfect solution to a problem is any solution which solves the problem 100%. And the only way you can do that is to take the opposite steps to the steps that you took in the first place that brought you into that problem. So let us now look at the problem of when a government put money into the economy, or the economy has collapsed to the extent where there is too much money now in it and needs to be taken out. Okay, how does the government put money into the economy? They print and they distribute it. Either they pay the workers, maybe they lend the banks or advance to the banks, however they do it. They put money into the economy. What is the opposite of putting into? What's the opposite? Taking it out. So the government can put the money in by whatever means, but how is it now are they going to take it out when they realize they have a problem? Well, there's only two mechanisms available to them. And one of them is the only one that is being employed by all the countries in the world. That is to borrow the money back through treasury bills and bonds. But in fact, there is another way. And it is the perfect way, the most logical way, the easiest way, the cheapest way, and the 100% solution to the problem. What is that? The only other available mechanism to the government when they want to take money out of the economy is by using the tax system. The tax system is a mechanism, legal, logical mechanism to take money out. Except that money that is taken out is not going to be spent. And that is the way now you take the money out of the economy permanently and solve that problem where there is an excess of money in the economy. Now, how does that work? The government increased the money supply by 120% during Patterson's time as Minister of Finance. I do believe it was 1991. They said there was therefore an inflation. At one time, Omar Davis said the inflation was 100%. So you now realize that you have an excess of money in the economy. How do you deal with the problem? How do you solve the problem of the hyperinflation and the fact that people were now buying up foreign exchange, not to buy goods and services from abroad, but to speculate, trying to preserve the value of the money that they have, right? The cash. So how you fix that problem? In future, I would recommend, and you can send this to the Prime Minister, yes, send it to Mas Andrew, so he can think about whether or not it makes sense. And matter of fact, it makes perfect sense. So I'm sure you find that it makes sense, right? So what PJ ought to have done, had the mechanism been available at the time, was to use a special tax, which is created for that purpose and that purpose only to mop up liquidity. I decided to coin the tax and call it day tax, Davies tax. It was a mockery of Omar Davis, really. Right? Omar Davies tax, because he had to deal with the problem. Day tax. DATAX is what I call it. Right? So day tax would have been a special tax that the government would legislate in the parliament, only to be used when there is a liquidity problem, where there's too much money in the economy. And what they will do is this. You recall in 2013, after we penned that IMF agreement, we needed a whole heap of taxes to make the adjustment, right? Because the government never wanted to cut down on them spending, especially with the spending mostly is to pay salary of government workers. And we all wanted to be in this boat, and we all wanted to bail it out. We didn't want to leave anybody behind. So what did Dr. Peter Phillips do? The tax was spread right throughout the economy. 0.25% on this, 0.5% on that, 2% here, 2% there. It's spread. And that's exactly what you do with day tax. If you cannot identify where the money is, or if the money that was put into the economy spread so widely, then you spread the day tax as a tax on top of the other taxes. And if you say you want to get out, say, $30 billion in, say, 6 months or a year, you keep the tax in place until you accumulate that $30 billion. And then the tax comes to an end. You take them off the books. And that $30 billion that you took out of the economy, you just see the prices then coming back down, because now the money is no longer there. That money now you either lock up in the Bank of Jamaica or you throw it on a bond heap and burn them. They don't have no use to you. And that is a way to get the money back down. And it will cost the government not 1 red cent to do so. So if you started with $100 billion and the money supply increased to 130 billion and you don't have the production to back that and it's causing all kind of problem, you use a day tax to take out that 30 billion. You know, spend it again, you dash it away, or burn it, or you put it in the Bank of Jamaica. Then the prices will fall to where they were before. Problem solved. Talk to me, people. Talk to me. That is the solution, and that is what we ought to put in place as law to ensure that if this happens in future, and it will happen in future, again, the generation in the future will have a mechanism now for solving the problem. So you have a mechanism when there is a shortage of money, there's a mechanism in place where you can add money to the economy. When there is too much money, you now have a mechanism to take the money back out or take a portion of the money that is causing the problem out. Are you following me, my peeps? Yes. No. All right, so you may say, Michelle, you're too rough on them, man. They're entitled to make a little mistake. And that was their one little mistake. Well, that may be so. Everybody may make mistakes, yes, and occasionally. But in their case, it was 2 times because they did it again. Putting pressure on government, making out that them know more about this thing because them can make $2. Them think them understand public policies. And so giving advice, as it were, to the Patterson government in the 90s, that flop. It was not the only time when they did it again. You ask when? During the Bruce Golding administration? Yes. My peeps. Them same one. You had 2 groups of private sector individuals. Perhaps it's the same group. After the others who gave the advice flop, you had another set. And they were advocating for what is known as indirect taxation. You remember that? Indirect taxation. What is the argument for it? It is unfair to the worker who is paying PAYE that they should now be asked to pay GCT, when at the same time you have people who are not paying PAYE, such as those persons on the minimum wage and those persons who are self-employed not paying taxes. So their argument is that what the government should do, that they think is a good idea, is remove gradually, not one time, yes, over a period of time, income tax and corporate tax to 0, if my memory serves me right. And then reduce GCT from the 17.5% it was at the time to 10%, but this time place it on the production of all goods and services. They said the government will get back the money that they would have given up. They said that the government will be better off, and they claim it's an equitable move, meaning that the only way you will pay the tax is if you spend. And so it's a consumption tax, and therefore when you spend, you pay. And they say that is better for the poor, better for the man who is not so poor, and obviously it's better for him too, right? Because he had to pay. I mean, when you're making, for argument's sake, $10 million a year, and you have to be paying 25%, 2.5 million, that's very heart-rending, man, because that is money that you could use. So of course it was beneficial to them. As for Butch Stewart, beneficial to him too at that time, because a lot of his wealth was coming from tourists that didn't have to put up with the kind of system that they were proposing for Jamaica, right? They had sales tax, of course, and they would come with their money, spend with him, and then he would not have to pay any corporation tax. You get it? So And then now, those people who are producing, living, doing business in Jamaica, it is they who would suffer the consequence of what it is that they were proposing. Now, why was it a bad idea? Indirect taxation? Because the poor man is in a very different position. He is partially protected by the minimum wage. Now, if you look at this chart, you will see that in January 29, 2008, the minimum wage was $5,500, right? Before that, it was $4,700, so it went up by $800. Now, if you put the GCT on everything, which means that poor man who spends, by the way, 50 to 60% of his income on food alone. And when we say food, we're not talking about oxtail and mutton and fish. No, we're talking about chicken back, right? We're talking about chicken neck. We're talking about chicken foot, chicken gizzard, chicken liver. We're talking about a whole heap of starchy food, most of which is not good for them, and all kind of sweetening things because they are cheaper. So they buy the things that are less, cost less. That is what the poor man does. So 50 to 60% of his income is spent on food. So that when you put GCT on everything and he's required to pay $550 out of that $5,500, that's a lot of money for him. That means a lot to that poor man, Mr. Matalan. Little Joe. Call him there for me, make him draw up a seat. Little Joe, you clearly don't have the imagination to understand what's going on in a poor man's home. $550 mean a lot to him, as opposed to a man earning 10 million, as some were earning at that time, paying $1 million in GCT. Far less. He can lose that $1 million, but the poor man can hardly afford to lose $550, which means that he is now going to have to cut back on food, because that is where most of the money is spent, and transportation. And there's very little else that he can do with the rest of it. Can't save. Many of them spend the money before the week is even out. You understand now, little Joe? So when you were there whispering into the government's ear, perhaps before, I don't know, Audley would have to confirm and ask Bruce whether or not the private sector had promised that if they were to implement this particular policy, which they believe at the time was best for the country and the people of this country, they would have sold Bruce Golding and Audley Shaw that idea, right? And maybe for some reason they did not see the danger. So they went and they implemented this indirect taxation. And the effect of it was, whereas you have the world crisis going on, at a gallop, and our trading partners are the ones we need to focus on, the ones that we buy goods from and the ones that we sell goods to. That would be the United States, Canada, Trinidad and Tobago, China, and the United Kingdom. At that time, China was growing by over 9% every year when everybody else was floundering. The United States had two, let me read the information for you. As you can see, they only had one decline in 2009, negative 2.6%. The 2008, they barely made it, 0.12%, 2010, 2.71%, and in 2011, 1.55%. So that's our major trading partner. Whatever is happening there also should be reflected in our country, especially in circumstances where the epicenter of the issues that were affecting the world started in the United States and was supposed to have been affecting them very badly. Our next major trading partner is Canada. We send a lot of our foodstuff and so on to Canada, to our Jamaican people, and we import from them as well, right? Now, again, Canada declined only in 1 year, 2009, by negative 2.92%. That's our major trading partner. Whatever is, remember now we know, if we and them alone only existed in the world, then the condition that is happening there also should be similar to what is happening here, right? Because we not deal a lot with the other set of people in the world. So what was happening with them would affect our major trading partner, and then now would affect us. You get it, my peeps? Yes, but that was not what was happening. We were not experiencing what they were experiencing. We now come to our brethren in Trinidad and Tobago. As you can see, in 2008, when everybody else was struggling, they actually grew by 3.3%. But by 2009, when everybody else was in a real bad shape, their economy declined by negative 4.4%. That's how much it contracted by. By 2010, they recovered by 3.3%, and then they lost again in 2011. Their economy grew only by negative, well, it didn't grow. It declined by negative 0.29%. That's them. And you will want to remember that Trinidad and Tobago is where we were getting a lot of our little food stuff, biscuits and crackers, but we were also getting the asphalt, if I remember correctly, from them as well. So they were our major trading partner in CARICOM. So now we come to the United Kingdom. Now the United Kingdom is very, very important to us because that is where a large portion of our exports go, especially with bananas and sugar and the like, right? And for them, in 2008, their economy declined by 0.2%. In 2009, it declined again. The economy contracted by negative 4.6%. But then after that, now, they got hold of themselves, and in 2010, it increased and grew by 2.2%, and by 2011, by 1.1%. Now, let us take a look now to see what was happening to Jamaica at the time when all that was happening elsewhere, to our trading partners. Now, when you look up Jamaica, the first thing that pop out of you is what it says here. Jamaica's gross domestic product growth rate from 2008 to 2011 was 5.1% negative. It was negative 5.1%. Our economy contracted by 5.1%. That's what this is saying. It says with the country's economy shrinking during that time. All right? Now it says that in 2008, the Jamaican economy contracted by an estimated 0.6% due to the global economic downturn. That's what they said, right? Good. Now you will recall that in 2008, most of the other countries had low growth, right? But we had a negative growth, no problem. And remember that in 2009, all of them, and that is all of our trading partners, had negative growth in 2009. However, in 2010, remember, we and all the other countries, including our trading partners, were affected by the world crisis that was taking place, right? And the United States being the epicenter of it. So in 2010, all of our trading partners had positive growth. The United States 2.7%, Trinidad and Tobago 3.3%, Canada 3%, the UK 1.7%, except Jamaica. So what that would suggest is that something else was going on in Jamaica. And even though we were at pains, people like Ross and Hyman, who has the ear of everybody, because him on ear, right? to tell the people that the policy that they were pursuing, this business about indirect taxation, for some, but for the poor man, it was in fact a direct taxation. Because when he bought something, he would pay GCT. The GCT would be collected by the businessman and handed over to the government. That was a direct taxation, not indirect about that. You understand? That poor man was expected to pay 17.5% in GCT out of him 5,500 that can hardly buy food. That was a total of $962.50, right? Well, the government was put under pressure, and I recall some of the things they were taking the, putting GCT on. I think they might have reversed it. So it's not everything that GCT was on. And the poor man can always avoid that by going to the market and buy food rather than going to the supermarket. So guess what happened? They reduced the taxes on the rich people. Property tax, the people in the higher income bracket were paying more. They reduced their tax outlay, and to make up for it, they actually put the tax to on the people who are at the bottom, the property owners who are at the bottom of the scale, those very poor people, who can hardly afford it, right? And they were doing other things too, shifting the burden of the taxation from those who can afford it to the consumer. And what resulted? The consumer, if he used to go, and a worker, she used to go and do her hair every week after she get her pay. Guess what? She couldn't afford it anymore. So something I forget, lick. She not going to cut down on her food. So she cut down on her other expenses that wasn't necessary. So she started to go to the hairdresser maybe once a month. Same thing with the man, go to the barber once a month. Where they used to buy certain things, I cut that out. And then the economy now began to flounder because there was just not enough money in them pocket to buy all the things that they used to buy, because the tax now is interfering. The tax now is imposed on them. So therefore, the cost of everything went up. Things that they used to buy without GCT. The gas price went up. They were shoving some of the gas, the taxes in the gas price, which shoot up the price of everything else, right? And then the economy began to flounder. A whole heap of business went out. Couldn't stay in business because the consumer never had any money to spend. They just spend on the necessary things. There was nothing else. And that was the reason why the economy was declining. So we had two blows going at the same time. First, it was the international crisis, financial crisis, epicenter in the US. That was more or less solved by 2010. And then we had a double blow locally where the tax burden was shifting from those with money, from the little Joe Matalan and the Brute Stewart, and the tax was now put into items like gas. Them love to put items on gas. That shoot up the price now of everything. Everything gone up. And the people who had that little meager money cut back. And it was the business who suffered. You cannot get rich if your consumers are getting poorer. And a lot of the business then went under. And who it was that told Bruce Golding, advised him that this was the way to go, and them know about business, and because them love to talk like say the politicians don't know nothing, where the politicians' responsibility is to you and me, and we put them there. In addition to the private sector, their responsibility is to you and me too. And they're the ones that's responsible for public policies. And them now as private sector now. Right? Because them think they can make too little shilling. Them think that they know more about these things than the people that we put there. Put them under pressure. Right? Them take them advice. And then this is what happened. Right? 13 consecutive quarters of negative growth. You hear what I just said a while ago, people? 13 quarters of negative growth. Jamaica's economy declined in 2007. The economy grew by 1.5%. By 2008, it declined by 0.6%. Decline again by 6.5% when Trinidad had declined by 4.3%. We declined by 6.5%. That was the heaviest blow of the world crisis. By 2010, when everybody else recovered, we still declined, right? What did we decline by? 2010 by 1.5%. And 2011, them said the economy grew by 1.5%, and that was what saved the day. So these private sector people recognize that for the second time, their idea about the economy and what to do did not serve the country well. The first one resulted in the crash of the local banking sector. The second one caused a massive crash in the economy where a lot of business went under because there was just not enough business. People never had the money to spend. You following me? That would have now caused deflation. There was just not enough money, right? And so they decide now, maybe they should just allow the politician to do them thing. When Peter Phillips came, fortunately, he knew something about finance and economics, so they never had to tell him nothing. They only needed to cooperate with him when they asked them to relinquish some of that interest rate that was being given to them, and they cooperated. And then they worked out an agreement with the IMF, our plan, executed the plan. He set up EPOC. I guess EPOC was a clever idea, to get them involved, make them think so them participating. Otherwise, they would probably give themselves damn trouble. So they were there in EPOC making pronouncements on the economy and so on, until we are at the position now where we have money like dirt. So Sandra tell we, money like dirt, man, that we can do all kind of something. We can all give up money now to taxpayers. We are now in a position where we never had to raise taxes for 7 consecutive years. That, of course, I promise you, has more to do with the person than anything else, because we have an attitude in this country, every time we want money, we run to the taxpayers for it. But this man don't like, Andrew, he don't like taxes. He don't like pay tax. So he make sure say, he put none upon we at all, because him know him will be heaping it up on himself, and he's a man who don't like pay tax, right? And so we benefit from that. So my peeps, this is my beef with the private sector organization of Jamaica. On 2 occasions, the government will listen to them, and on 2 occasions, the economy suffered, and a lot of people lost their monies and their businesses. And we're not taking the responsibility away from the politicians, It was their responsibility. They were the ones who did it, and therefore it's their fault. Them put the policy in place, which caused all this mess. But, as I said before, their biggest error was knowing who they must take them advice from. And as it turned out, they took their advice from the wrong set of people. That is all I have to say today. My peeps, I have more for you, because there is something that I discovered about Marky G. With G, yeah, man. And I will post the one there shortly. About taxes too. Yes, man. So anyway, thank you so much for listening to me and be so patient. Thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, and leaving your comments. Until next time, you take very good care of yourselves and walk good.